Rebels get that first SEC win out of the way. Now it's time to pile up more wins against better teams. And, of course, an old rival and a tough place to play, maybe the most difficult in all of college football on Saturday night. Welcome into Ole Miss Live right here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you being here. Check out that banner down below. Subscribe to the Ole Miss channel that we are putting together with Leanne Herring from the Rebel Walk. Leanne, how you doing today?
Doing good. We got a late start, so apologies to all our Ole Miss Rebels waiting to get us on, but it was doing the mom thing today. Exciting thing, but like you said, great win against South Carolina. Again, not the prettiest win, but hey, we'll take it. Definitely a much better showing on the road by the Rebs. I think those were the Rebs we expected to see against Kentucky. Again, I think we're back. We're finally back on SEC time. We saw more of a lot of things, a lot more positive things. One, I know if you noticed that, Mark, I felt like the ball distribution at South Carolina on the road, Lane Kiffin and Charlie Weiss, as far as the offensive scheme that they did, seemed like they had a better launch on not just relying just on one person. They used several assets and things, and I think that helped a lot. Of course, the defense came clutch, even though we were out with some key players like Princely, Centarian Perkins. Kudos to him, another young player that just truly has stepped up. And I was talking with Jackson yesterday on the show. I think that we don't want to be out without key players, but again, the depth is really showing out. The ability for Lane Kiffin to be able to have some key players out, but still be able to go to young players like Centarian, veteran transfer portal players, has been clutch in that win over South Carolina. But again, big road win, but again, we have to look ahead to a tough atmosphere, a night game at LSU, and we all know that record. LSU is a difficult place to play in, and those Bayou Bengals, especially at night, that's not an easy task. But you can bet that the Rebels definitely have been preparing. I was hearing that down in Oxford right now that you can hear Colin Baton Rouge apparently from practice. So it looks like Lane Kiffin has been blaring that at the vault to get his guys ready, because as we know, a lot of times we don't think about that, but the noise and the crowd sound in Death Valley is something else. And at night, that this is I believe, one of the most underrated rivalries that we've seen. So it's going to be an exciting weekend, Mark, for sure. In week 7 already? Can't believe it.
Underrated rivalry. So I posted on X promoting our show. I put the Magnolia Bowl. I got to admit this. I'm going to admit this. I just found out today it was the Magnolia Bowl myself. So I've known about this rivalry for a long time. And when I looked it up, I just thought, I wonder if this game has a name. And so I just, there it is, Magnolia Bowl. Okay, I didn't know. So we're going to go with it. But these two have gotten together so many times over the years. And, thinking about Death Valley, thinking about the crowd, thinking about night game in Death Valley, that's a double dose of Bayou Bengal fever there, and the fans getting riled up the entire day and ready to go. It brings me back to what Ole Miss was able to achieve against South Carolina. And it's something that you've hit on over and over and over in our discussions during the offseason and leading into the early part of the season, is how much you thought of this defensive line, and that they could take control of games, that they could lead things, and this could be a really dominant unit. And I think that was a big key in South Carolina. Obviously, they have shown the ability to take on top teams and produce nice wins. Kentucky should have beaten LSU. So they've shown themselves capable, and to go in their SEC road environment and punch them in the mouth immediately, take control of the game, then you pull that crowd out of the game. You don't let them get a chance to get on top of you. That's exactly what Ole Miss did. Of course, Shane Beamer kind of went for the gusto, kind of went for that knockout punch to try to create some momentum on his side. It backfired. Chris Paul made an outstanding play on a 4th and 1 play on the fake punt. And that really, Walter Nolan had a big play in recovering a fumble. And so right out of the gate, it was the defense that took charge and then allowed the offense to get their footing and get into the game.
No, exactly. I think the defense, it's the winning those games in the trenches, those man-to-man coverages. I mean, they make the difference, especially in games like this. I won't stress it enough. As we get deeper into SEC play, as more things are on the line, I really do think that this LSU game that we're going to see on the road against Ole Miss is possibly a playoff elimination match. I find it really difficult that a two-loss team, especially in the SEC, the way things are going, will have a chance to make it to the playoffs. So I really believe that beyond the SEC, this game is going to be huge in the playoff picture. But going back to what you're talking about, the lines of the defensive line, Walter Nolan, exceptional game. I mean, he was one of the best investments that Lane made as far as the transfer portal. Really top-rated kid that has just come out here, shown up, taking care of business every time. Has really complimented the other young players on that offensive line. They really showed up when on the road in South Carolina, and also I think it was really good to see the improvement on the O line. They didn't play perfect, but that's been also a concern. The Ole Miss offensive line, having some struggles, not finding its footing. But they allowed only one sack this game. I would have preferred that they run the ball a little bit more. Like I said, I'm a fan of the run game, especially in these closer, heated matches. As much as I love to see Charlie Weiss and Lane Kiffin have a throwing darts into the end zone. Again, with the defenses that we're going to see, like we saw at Kentucky against South Carolina, and we're definitely going to see at LSU. There's going to be a lot of more pressure, a lot of more coverage. And I can imagine that the key, for LSU, aside, getting Ole Miss off its footing where they don't have a control on this game early, is these third and longs. I think that that will be one of the things we're going to see a lot more from this LSU defense when Jackson Dart hits the field, is trying to get Jackson Dart off his footing and trying to get in that third and long. But again, was really pleased with the offensive line improvement. And there, the secondary play in South Carolina, overall, the defense was a lot better. They locked down a little bit better, and I think they're headed more in the right direction as far as penalties. And the one thing I did see that was a concern, even though we came out with the win in there, is that we only scored 3 points in the second half, and we're really going to have to find a better footing as getting our offensive rolling. We can lay it on the trust of our defense. We know defense can handle it, but only scoring 3 points in the second half is not going to get us a win in a night game in Baton Rouge. So that's another concern. So I think that, we're on a good track. It was really good to see the improvements on the line, on the secondary, but we have to keep our foot on the gas. And another thing I can't stress enough, I think I've said it in the last 2 shows that I've done in 24 hours. I think a big thing for us that we saw in South Carolina and that we're going to need to do here is really converting those third downs. I think that when we convert those third downs, that those are going to be key, because I feel like this is going to be another close game. We saw last year's a really immensely high scoring game, but I think this year it's going to be really nitty gritty, and it's going to be a really close one. And those third down conversions, controlling the ball, controlling the clock early, and trying to, these defenses are going to be hard at work this weekend, trying to keep those offenses off the field, because at the end of the day, you got two offenses that we know can put points on the board. So it's a matter of a race to the finish, who can put more points on the board, but not let the gas go.
Folks, Leanne and I are here every Wednesday, so put that on your calendar. Just make it a date with us every Wednesday, talking Ole Miss football. We run through the SEC. We have fun. So be here for Ole Miss Rebel Talk. And again, we're going to get to recruiting. We'll get to the SEC, and we will typically have guests on our show every week. So make it a deal with us every Wednesday. We'll be on the Ole Miss channel at some point exclusively. We're simulcasting right now, so you can watch us on the Ole Miss channel. Subscribe there, and we will keep it going with Ole Miss football talk. What was a lot of fun was obviously J.J. Pegues, who got to score a couple touchdowns. So you got the big 325-pounder that Lane calls on. And I was looking at some of the stats, and he's scored 5 touchdowns in his career. So this is not a new thing for him. He's actually caught a touchdown pass and actually was listed as a tight end at Auburn at one point. Yeah. And they said, Jackson Dart said, this guy can play tight end. Definitely. Yeah. He's like one of the most athletic guys on the team.
He really is. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because you read my mind, because I was thinking about it. We're talking Walter Nolan, and, JJ came into my mind when he played that game, when he was in Oxford. Lane Kiffin was going to call a play. And then, the whole fan started saying, wanted, and he's like, I got to give the audience what they want. And sure enough, I mean, he's a tight end converted now. He's like 3-something. I mean, he's a big boy, but he's a big boy that's got a lot of athleticism, and I expect that he will play another big role. But again, that's what you love seeing with Ole Miss. You love the fact that there's so many guys that you don't expect that have played intricate roles in this game. And I think that we're going to see Lane Kiffin pull out more of the stops against at LSU. So I expect that he'll always put some excitement. But yeah, when you see JJ go in there and just pile in like nothing, it's great to see. But yeah, he's done a lot for the team and getting those touchdowns. And I expect that he's going to play a good role at some point in this LSU game for sure.
Yeah, the guy's a fifth-year senior. Just seems like everybody loves him. He's just a great guy, great teammate. Lane Kiffin said, "Yeah, this guy,
hometown kid, yeah, Oxford kid,
yeah,
hometown kid." So yeah, there's just a lot of, you just love to see those guys, like you said. You don't expect a guy like him just to get into the red zone. So yeah, it's another excitement factor that I'm sure will continue throughout this season.
You mentioned Princely, and then also Trey Harris had to leave the game. Do you have any idea what's going on with those two guys and anybody else that's got health issues?
Well, those are the main two concerns. I think too, a couple days at the presser, Lane talked and addressed about Trey Harris. If we were to play LSU today, Trey Harris wouldn't be involved. He wouldn't be playing today. Same thing with Princely. I think as far as that, it's going to be, another game time situation. But I also mentioned it. That's the great thing about having the depth that we have. I believe, that there's a lot of players that are stepping up. And I think as far as that Lane and his staff are taking the right call, making sure that Trey is going to be up to par, not just putting him in because, we want to put him in. Same thing with Princely. I think allowing them the rest and the recovery is essential. And I think that's what they're doing. So I think really that's kind of where things stand. Again, it's those Wednesday reports. I haven't had a chance to look at the Wednesday update injury, but again, I'm going to go, everybody's injured, everybody's probable, everybody's questionable because, Lane Kiffin is like the Bill Belichick of college football when it comes to the injury left. But, all jokes aside, no, but you don't want to be without one of your top guys like Princely and Trey Harris. But again, I think the comfort is that Ole Miss has players that can step in and step up. And I think that we're looking at the long haul. If by chance they don't come in and they don't play, I think that we want to have them full and healthy when we play Georgia, to finish out the schedule or, in the next coming weeks, because back-to-back road games are tough. They're tough. And that's another key thing. You can have immense depth, but, you also have to make sure you keep your players healthy. And I think Lane is making the right call, seeing it, because we have a lot of assets, a lot of other assets and weapons. And, as much as I want Trey Harris to be in this game, because again, we all see what he can do when he gets the ball. He's a comfort zone. He's got a real connection with Jackson Dart when he's on the field. But again, it also showed that we don't want Trey to be our only go-to guy. We saw what Kentucky was able to do. The defense was really incredible in being able to put coverage where Jackson Dart only guy was Trey Harris. And we don't want that to be the situation, I believe, against LSU. As clutch and as key as we know Trey Harris is, if that's our only guy, because the defense has got everybody else covered or open, we don't want that. It's going to be a long night in Baton Rouge. So personally, I think that we're going to see more of what we saw Weiss calling the ball distribution. Again, I think that the run game will see more. I really do believe that in this game, we'll finally see more tight end play. And I say that because our tight ends will need some guys to be able to block better as far as being able to clear the way. And I really think that the tight ends will play a more intricate part. So that's kind of where I think we are in updates. It's really kind of a game to game, a game time kind of situation. I think that's kind of where Lane leaves it every week. And I think that's where we are. But whether or not those gentlemen play, I think that the Rebels feel confident and the people that they have, succeeding them. I mean, we've seen already bits and pieces of it in the first 4 weeks, those guys that can step up and on, we saw it in South Carolina. Like I said, Centurion Perkins, talk about a kid that, when you get him in there, I mean, he's ready to play and he's got no problem stepping in. And we got more kids like that are hungry. And I can't even tell you enough that in this game, the way, the passion, the energy, there's just going to be so many players that are just going to play with this intensity. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot of new unexpected names kind of be in the mix just to change it up and keep LSU and Brian Kelly on his toes, because everyone thought at the beginning of the year, including myself, that LSU was going to be a flop, and it wasn't because of the struggles. But again, that's
LSU is going to be a flop.
Kelly.
You got to define that. You got to help me here, Leanne. When you say LSU is going to be a flop, what do you think? What do you mean by a flop?
Well, I mean, I just don't think that they're going to get to where they want to be in the SEC championship. They're going to get to the things I think that what the LSU fans, just like what Ole Miss fans expect of when you have a team that's got a lot of assets and you're wanting to get there. So maybe not like in a total thing, but I think in the expectations of when you're a team in the SEC, I think there's that yearning, especially for LSU, getting all those national championships in multiple sports, and then just kind of fading away, and now they're having to come back. I think that's just that pressure, and I think that's just that determination. But again, like I said, Ole Miss did a better job on offense. Like I said, our offensive line played a lot better, and it was good to see that. I know there's been a lot of question because I can't stress it enough. You can have elite playmakers in your backfield. We all know Jackson Dart is a calm, collective. He can handle in pressure situations, but if he doesn't have that protection up front, he can't get to guys like Parrish. He can't get to guys like Trey Harris. If he doesn't have those big guys up front being able to do their job too. It's a collective effort, and it takes a village to be able to put those points on the board. So it was great to see the offensive line, have a better footing and a better showing.
Okay, we're going to take a super chat comment here. Then I'm going to hit you up with something that I brought up last week.
Okay.
So Kenneth is here. What do we have here from Kenneth? We thank you for the contribution, Kenneth. Just wanted to say Ole Miss is so lucky to have Mark and gorgeous Leanne start this segment. Hotty toddy. Well, Kenneth, thank you.
Well, hotty toddy, Kenneth, thank you. We appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Kenneth. Check the spelling on Leanne's name, but we know your heart's
it's
in the
all
right place there. Very well.
I love it. Thank you. Appreciate
Very good. So I'm looking at the box score here, and I watched most of the first half, and then I knew Ole Miss was good to go, and I was on to other things. So I find this interesting with a lot of teams. So it's not just Ole Miss, because the running back carry distribution says a lot about who they trust, who they want, and how, not just the sheer numbers, but when they're coming. And in this game, obviously, Ole Miss got out to a lead, but in other games, LSU probably, we'll see how it goes, but should be a close game. And other close games, it very much tells a tale in terms of fourth quarter carries, and then how running backs are used. Obviously, some are more pass catchers as well. Some of them have to leave the field, not because they're not talented players, but they're not as strong in pass protection. They're a liability, or they're really strong in pass protection. So there are other variables there, no doubt about it. But I'm seeing Henry Parrish again, despite a number of backs that can do the job, they are relying on Henry Parrish once again this week against the game against South Carolina.
No, exactly. And, I know that there's a lot of talk, about why we're not using a specific other backs, like Ulysses Bentley's name is a popular name that's come up. I know that there's those signs out, Freeboo. He's a talented back, but I think right now the formula, like Lane says, it's nothing personal against, that he's leaning on Parrish, but right now Parrish is, just the way his body's built, just the way he maneuvers and he mechanics. He's not only a guy that you can trust that can carry and run that ball, he can also break through those defenses. And we have to remember, when you're facing these SEC defenses, it's not easy, no matter how fast you are, no matter if you're a Quinshon Judkins type. You've got to be able to have a physical body to be able to block those tackles, because like I said, your own line's trying to clear the way, but you got to do your work too. And I think too, when you see Parrish, he's that guy. He's like a bulldozer. He can, he's not going to let go of the ball. He can break through, he can make the way and clear the blocks, so I think that's really why there's just this steadiness that he does, and this ease that he has, so I think that's why Ole Miss is really stuck with him, because he's proven effective. He's been able to he's not one of those running backs, like you said, that has to come off the field because he's too gassed. He can go the distance, and he's an endurance type of running back. And like I said, he's got a very strong physical built that I think that just makes him, that more powerful. And I think that what he does and he maneuvers, he just knows how to get through the things and where you need to be. Simple as that, and he can carry some, make some big plays.
So I'm going to make a big, bold prediction here, and I'm going to say that this game is not going to be as high scoring as last year. So that's my bold prediction. Last year was like 55-49 or something crazy like that. So in no way do I see that many points being scored. this year. No way.
No, I agree with you there. I really think that in this game, I don't think that there's not going to be exciting plays. I don't think that both these offenses are not going to, try to put put some exciting plays as far as the pass game. I really think that this is going to be two defenses that are going head to head. I really see that Ole Miss is going to lean on the run game more because I feel like with the run game, again, that's why I'm a fan of it. You can control the clock better. You can take time off the clock. And most of this time, it's a lot easier for you to be able to catch and you can, go to different targets. And I feel like it's a lot easier to control that than, getting a pick or something when you're trying to pass the ball and you're trying to go pass heavy. So I really do believe that, Ole Miss leans on the run game and much what we saw in South Carolina, but I do believe we're going to amp it up. I believe we're going to have more tight end play. I just think that the way we distributed the ball was effective because we kept South Carolina guessing, and we're going to have to do the same with LSU because if we do what we did against Kentucky and we have our one go-to guy because the defense just puts so much pressure and has such great coverage. I don't believe that we'll be successful against LSU because no matter when we have elite playmakers, we have elite guys in our backfield, but to make it just a pass catch between one significant wideout on our team isn't going to help put points on the board. LSU is going to be able to knock that down, point blank. So I think that we spread the ball out. And we do the ground game, because we can control and all that. And I do believe again that those third down conversions, and being able to not be heavy on the penalties, which is tough to ask in a game like this. I think that that's another thing that we're going to have to really have situational awareness is the penalties because with the way the atmosphere is, with the way the energy is, and just the intensity of this game, it's really easy to start getting penalties in these type of games. And that's one thing that we've seen that's played to Ole Miss. We did a lot better job of it in South Carolina. But and again, when you're in a rivalry like this, you're playing at night in Death Valley, things are going to get heated, words are going to get exchanged, and it's really easy to get off your footing and your concentration. So that's another thing, that I think will be heavy in play along with special teams in this one.
All right, folks, I've kicked out 3 people from the chat. Let's talk ball. Let's just talk ball. That's all I'm going to say.
Oh, all right. Goodness.
Doc, no Iowa show yesterday. We had all sorts of chaos going on in my life, like evacuation kind of stuff. So I'm like 300 miles away.
Oh, I know. Kudos to Mark, I was going to say, because I noticed you're in a different setup, and I was like, look at him during bracing a hurricane out here and doing multiple shows, not just our shows. I mean, but like they say, the show must go on, and here we are bringing football to you. So thanks to Mark, making everything happen behind the scenes for everybody too.
I do appreciate it, and we are good. Now, yeah, so we're going to try to pull one together, Doc, sometime this week, but I can't guarantee it. All right. So, yeah, this game in Death Valley against LSU. So, you've been around the Ole Miss family, the Ole Miss fan base for a long, long time.
Yeah.
So I know I think this is so different with college football than anything else, that there is like a different feel, a different vibe, a different approach to different rivalries. Obviously, they all have their different flavors. And for Ole Miss, the schools are close to Alabama, so there's a different deal with that series. Obviously, the Egg Bowl, Mississippi State, that is, in-state, bad blood, all of that going on. How would you phrase and how would you describe what goes on with LSU and Ole Miss?
Oh yeah, this rivalry is nothing less of being heated. No joke. I mean, you got the thing about the corn dogs, the jokes about go to hell LSU. There was a whole column that I was meaning to read about how we started, go to hell LSU. It's a really unique story about back in the 60s. Anyway, I wish that I had read the column, but I mean, this is, like I said, one of the most underrated rivalries. There's definitely no love lost between these two teams, whether we're playing in Baton Rouge or definitely when they come to town in Oxford. It's always interesting to see all the LSU jokes and all the LSU fans, come into contact with all our Ole Miss Rebels. But again, it's really exciting. I think I think this week 7 is just around the SEC, around college football. Is going to be a big week. I mean, there's so many rivalries and there's so many things that are being are gonna happen. I mean, we got Texas OU, we got Ole Miss, against LSU. So I mean, week 7, we thought week 6 was going to be crazy, and it was crazy. How about them Arkansas Razorbacks, by the way? But week 7, I mean, is full of rivalries and everything. But like I said, there's no love lost between the Bayou Bengals and the Ole Miss Rebels. That's a love-hate relationship. And just looking up, I was going over the stats. I mean, uh, since 2010, the Tigers have gone 10-4, and they lead the series against the Rebels. And since 2000, they've gone 65-6 in night games. And to icing off the cake, like I said, the Rebels are really going to have to be on their toes, because remember, Brian Kelly is 9-1 off bye weeks, and so the Bayou Bengals are coming into this one not only rested, refreshed, but they're on their home turf. They're not coming to Oxford for this one, you know. And sometimes a bye week can be good, sometimes a bye week can be bad. Like I said, just ask Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, Missouri, the good side of bye weeks and also the bad side. But Kelly has proven when he's fresh off of bye week, and he's not only on and steady, he's also got a chance and opportunity to play the Ole Miss Rebels. Like I said, this game for me is a playoff implication game. I do believe that a 2-loss team is going to be really difficult, even going 10-2, even with the expanded playoff, to get in this one. So I really feel like LSU and Ole Miss are playing for a lot, not just outside the SEC, but on the national picture. I don't know how you feel about that. I mean, like I said, look at what week, how crazy week 6 was. Tennessee falls at home to Arkansas, on the road to Arkansas, and then of course nobody expected Vanderbilt to topple Alabama. It was really funny because you're seeing Lane at the post game presser, and he just kind of stops, asking about what's going on here, because again, like Lane said, we're probably never going to see that ever again. But man, it was something to watch, and I'm sure that both Arkansas and Vanderbilt were happy to pay those post game fines just for those kind of wins. But like I said, there's just so much crazy stuff happening, and this is definitely going to be a matchup. It's going to be heated, but I agree with you, Mark. It's going to be a gritty game, and it's going to be a low scoring game. I don't think it's going to emulate anything we saw. As prolific as both these offenses are, as these quarterbacks, are their signature video game kind of offenses. I don't think we're going to see that here. I just think that it's just going to get down to the wire, because there's just going to be so much intensity. And I really do believe we're going to see the heart of the defenses. We're really going to see what the Ole Miss defense is made of. And we're also really going to see what the Ole Miss offense is made of going against an LSU defense.
Yeah, so with LSU, I've seen them play twice, and really they've played the 2 games that really matter. They dusted off their FCS and their group of 5 opponents, but of course they opened in Vegas against USC. Great game, went down to the final play, basically the final play, as they lost by a touchdown. USC setting up for a field goal and broke the play for a touchdown, and LSU loses that game. And then the South Carolina game, I thought they were completely overmatched and outplayed in the first half of that game, and Lenora Sellers got knocked out, and that seemed to really play into LSU's hands, as Robbie Ashford was not up to the challenge. And still credit LSU for a big comeback win on the road in that game against South Carolina, and they pulled that out. So I've seen them play down to the wire. Both games ended on the final play. South Carolina missed a field goal. Otherwise, that's an overtime game. Same with the USC game. So we're seeing LSU play 2 really close games against good opponents. USC may not be quite as good as we thought earlier. They lost to Minnesota last week. Didn't look great. Offensive line issues. South Carolina, again, early on, looked better than what I anticipated, but maybe they're playing back to where they're supposed to be sitting in the SEC after we see them lose by 24 points against Ole Miss. So I do think that Ole Miss is a better football team. Not substantially, but I do think that they're a better team. I just think defensively they're a better team. I don't think that LSU has cleaned up all of their messes from last season, in which they were just a historically bad LSU defense. I do think that they've addressed a lot. They brought in Blake Baker, defensive coordinator at Missouri. He's made changes. They brought in transfer portal additions, but none of them were anything on the level of like a Walter Nolan. They were stopgap kind of guys. They've lost Harold Perkins, one of the best players in the SEC. So I think defensively, this is where I think Ole Miss can take advantage, not blister them for 50 points like they did last year, but where there's a big advantage, I just think, on this side of the ball for Ole Miss, where the LSU offense is excellent, one of the top offensive lines in the country, weapons at wide receiver. I trust Garrett Nussmeier, excellent decision-making quarterback, has an NFL caliber arm. That's going to be a great matchup. But I really think that Ole Miss's weapons can really make life difficult on Saturday night for LSU's secondary.
No, I completely agree, and I think it's like you said, I think it's gonna be a battle for secondaries, like you mentioned, LSU secondary, is not up to par. They've cleaned things up and they've had their issues. With LSU, when you talk about them, they have big playmaking ability, and they throw the ball 61% of the time. So, but again, when you got the kind of defensive front like we have, and also the secondary, it was really good to see that they finally came together last week at South Carolina. They definitely cleaned up those penalties, and I think they're going to make it difficult. And they finally looked like they figured out some stuff. And I feel that this couldn't be a better time, a more perfect time for them to find. And we're talking about lines, how the offensive line, the defensive lines play an intricate part. Like I said, you can't deal with the big guys up front. We talked about that LSU offense. That LSU offense, their offensive line, they are good at pass blocking, no doubt about that. But they're not so good at the run block. And I think, like you said, I think that that's going to be another key thing that Ole Miss uses on the defensive end to try to be able to tear down through that LSU offense. Is they're not strong at the run block. So I think that the secondary again is going to come into big play and try to put a stop on that offensive line. Like I said, they all have proven parts but again, when you look at Ole Miss, when, not being biased, LSU has its strong points. But again, I got to agree with you, Mark, on this one. I think from all the teams that have gone into LSU, into Baton Rouge, playing in these type of games, I think Lane Kiffin is probably bringing one of the best Ole Miss teams that we have, that's most complete on both sides of the ball. And at the end of the day, that's what's going to win ball games in intense games like this. Like I said, not that LSU can't make big plays. They have a big playmaking ability. They have a strong offensive line, but there's a lot of holes in there that I think that Ole Miss is prepared to be able to address on both sides of the ball, where they can make it a difficult night. That's why I think it's going to be a low scoring game. But I think the defenses on both sides of the ball are going to have their work cut out for them, because at the end of the day, you're going to have to stop each other's offense, because at the end of the day, it's those points that are put on the board. You can make some big plays, but they have to result in points. And when they don't result in points, or you can't, you're stuck in those fourth downs and you got to punt it away, or you're not going to take a shot at it. Those can make the difference in these games. We've seen it out through all the weeks. Like I said, Ole Miss not being able to score more than 3 points in the second half for an offense that's not typical of, definitely can't do that in LSU. But I don't think they'll have the same struggle like that in the second half against LSU, because I think there's, like you said, there's just too many holes, too many weak spots in the defense, that I believe that we have our offense to be able to fast hand. But again, I think our defense and our secondary, especially the secondary, are going to try to get LSU in that offense, especially that offensive line with their weaknesses and holes, to try to expose that early on to get ahead in this game, because either team doesn't want it to get too far ahead, because as much as these teams have the ability to come back, you don't want to make this a comeback in the second half by a couple touchdowns, even a touchdown and a field goal. You don't want to make it that kind of game with this much intensity, especially playing at Baton Rouge and at night.
Look at Robert bringing the facts here. Most prolific offense we face. Tough environment. By the way, South oldest rivalry, Auburn, Georgia, first played in 1892. Ole Miss and LSU is only 2 years behind that. Been hating each other on the gridiron since 1894.
Wow. Well, it's been a while. That's definitely a long-lasting courtship by these two. And like I said, there's no love lost between either one of these teams for sure. No matter what era you came in, the intensity just grows at this one.
Leanne, you were talking lines, meaning offensive line, defensive line, but how about
Yes.
those other lines? How about those other lines? How are we doing on the other lines?
I haven't picked lines this week. But yeah, no, like I said, the shift, we knew that, we knew this was going to be a low line, just because of the way this things is. Of course, Ole Miss, I think the line started out 2.5, and I've seen it go, now it's at 3. It was yesterday at 3.5. I mean, it's going to be a close. I'm going to personally tell you on this one. As much as I know that Ole Miss would love to put 64 points on that board or get close to it, again, I think this isn't going to be the same kind of game we're going to see, just because I think that there's a lot that's going on here. So I like the under in this one. I like under 64 points. And at the end of the day, you just want to get the win out this one. And I think that's what the Rebel are more focused on. We know they can put up those big point numbers, and we can do that. But at the end of the day, I think that the under, I really like the under in this one. And man, I don't know if I'm ready to call it. That's just, I have to look at the money line on this one. I think Ole Miss comes out. I think Ole Miss, if any team was going to go into Baton Rouge and make the upset, in the Ole Miss team that was finally going to win in Baton Rouge, it's going to be this one. I like Ole Miss on the road, but again, that's one of those live lines. I'm not quite sure. As much as I have the confidence Ole Miss, this is just one of those games that it's just very tough to call, and it's a Wednesday. So I might be flipping a coin, and whoever wins on that one, that's who I'll take the thing. But I think both these teams are capable. I like Ole Miss coming out on this one. I think the Ole Miss is better prepared. But again, we're playing in Baton Rouge. Brian Kelly is just phenomenal coming off a bye week. They're rested. I just feel like there's a lot of things that could go. But again, Ole Miss is better prepared. I like the way they looked in South Carolina. I think if we amp it up, we come out of this one. So I like the Rebels. I like the Rebels in this one. I'm not sure if I like them by 3 points. That might be a money line bet for me, but I definitely like the under in this one. I like the under in 64.
So, folks, if you don't know what I'm doing, I'm scrolling through Leanne's X, because you should be following her there. Follow her on X. So we've got it right there on the banner, or I will. If it's not up there right now, I can't see. But we've got, I got to check her on these picks. My picks are on Patreon and on YouTube channel if you're a premium member. So anyway, I got to check on Leanne here. Mizzou minus 2.5. Okay.
That parlay didn't hit, but man, that my lock game did hit. It was my bold prediction of the week. Arkansas not only covering, Arkansas not only covering, but upsetting Tennessee. I mean, Arkansas defense did a great job putting those 3 corners in the backfield. I've never seen Nico so off. Off as far as, he really didn't have an answer to be able to get in the backfield. They really locked it down. So kudos to Arkansas for getting the job done and stunning Tennessee. But as much as you want to talk about that, talk about the that Vanderbilt, whatever Vanderbilt had in that system. I mean, and I loved it at the end because I don't know if you saw where Vanderbilt kept playing the Nick Saban quote on the Jumbotron down there, how how it's not the most, it's the easiest place to play. Like, there's nothing, basically is what it said. I thought that was so funny. It's funny how sometimes the ones that get the last laugh, and Vandy definitely got the last laugh in that one. And that definitely shakes up things, Speaking of Alabama, and I know we're going to talk a little bit recruiting later, but Jaheim Otis, a kid that was a very, very sought out recruit, committed to Alabama, made note that he's going to be redshirting. He's going to be redshirting, and he's going to be hitting the transfer portal. If you don't know anything about him, he's from Columbia, Mississippi. He was a kid that we really went after. So I suspect that Ole Miss and probably Mississippi State, as soon as he hits the transfer portal. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see another top transfer making some visits here soon. When he hits the portal back home, and he might be in powder blue next year. I mean, that's another asset and all that kind of stuff. So with the loss like that for Alabama, it also makes it difficult because, of course, it's in the middle of recruiting season, and it can also make it difficult for recruits, to kind of should we be looking somewhere else, give little faith. But again, we got to remember that Alabama's in a transition year, so it's a whole different world out there. But like I said, you got to love when things like that happen. When you get teams like Vandy that just came out of the blue and just all gas, no brakes, and then some. Upset the big guy. Upset. It's like it's David and Goliath kind of thing. But like I said, it was a in a week that's really wasn't expected to be much. When you looked at the week 6 matchups, you're kind of like, okay, that's, this, no way Vandy's going to do it. There was, like I said, my bold prediction was Texas, Tennessee, Arkansas. But I always think that those are the weeks that are always the craziest, Mark. I don't know about you. Those weeks you think that those non-marquee matchups, nothing happens. Look at all that happened. Goalposts going down through Nashville and Arkansas. I mean, it was just a great week in college football. But week 7, I mean, those matchups, it's going to be another crazy one. And like I said, I feel like week 7 is going to shape a lot of playoff talk. I mean, because we're almost there. We're midway.
We will get to week 7 here in a second. I just saw you brought up the goalpost going down in Vandy and at Arkansas, and I saw the fine difference. I saw 100,000. I saw 250. Do we have any idea why we are fining different amounts?
Yeah, that's a good question. I wish I knew that, but I do notice that the fines, and it just goes to show you. I mean, there's something else about the NCAA that you're just like, why does it? Is it because because you played Alabama and you played Tennessee? But hey, these are 2 top teams, or is it just because I wish I knew the answer to that one, but that's a really good question. Like what's going on there? Because like I said, they both put down some goalposts. They're pretty, I couldn't tell you about that one, but yeah, that's interesting. But that just goes to show you another thing about the NCAA that you just can't figure out.
I'm gonna do some research while we're starting our week 7 rundown here. Okay, what do we got? So Alabama and South Carolina both hurting, coming off losses, and we've got Bama at home against South Carolina. We got UMass, Missouri, as the Tigers step out of conference and need some work. So that's probably a good opponent for them to kind of heal their wounds and get better. Texas, Oklahoma, of course, Red River comes to the SEC. Mississippi State at Georgia, the Dogs against the Dogs, and Mississippi State, I think, has taken over as the worst team in the SEC. Florida, Tennessee, and we've got, of course, Ole Miss and LSU, and Vandy and Kentucky. So look out, Cats. Vandy's for real to a certain extent. They've played 3 good ball games this year, so they are so much better than they've been, and Kentucky at home. So what jumps out for you, Leanne?
Well, like you said, man, well, I'm sure the Rebels don't mind it much, but you gotta feel, like you said, for Mississippi State, really shocked that they haven't been able to make something happen. It's just like I said, when Jeff Lebby came down there, and of course, Lebby, great offensive guy, was with us, and then went back to Oklahoma. I said that when Lebby left, and when he left the Ole Miss program, that after he went to Oklahoma, that the next place he was going to have was a head coaching job, and sure enough, but Mississippi State just can't make a thing. I hate that those Dogs have to go on the road to face Georgia, because on that one, that's for me. I think that's a no-brainer. I don't even know what the line is at that one, and but I'm going to take Georgia on that one. No, hands down. I mean, unless Mississippi State pulls some kind of Mississippi miracle in Athens, which is a difficult place to play. That one for me is just kind of like that. I really think that Florida Tennessee game is going to be interesting. For me, it could be another. I don't think it's going to be an upset, but I think we're going to see a lot more from Florida. Florida's had a lot of big playmakers step up. And like I said, the DJ Lagway is just a kid that I've been on since I've watched him through high school. I'm glad to see him take the reins at Florida. He's going to be a really, really solid kid. I mean, he's as advertised. I think he's going to give Tennessee a run and what they're expected, but I don't see Tennessee falling again at home. At Neyland again. I think that Florida will come. I think Florida will be a lot better on their toes, despite the dumpster fire, despite that everything's going down there. I think they have a better composure, and I think they get a little bit of redemption in this one, but I don't believe they keep it close at Tennessee. I don't think Tennessee is going to go back to back, especially at home, in losses, and I don't see Nico being shaken by this Florida defense as much as it was at Arkansas. Let's see. Of course, we've talked Ole Miss, LSU plenty. Vandy, Kentucky, like I said, it's going to be interesting to see, because these are 2 teams in the SEC that haven't really gotten their praise. They're kind of always been the lower tier teams. They haven't really been seen as the football schools, but sometimes they come to spoil parties, and both of them have definitely. I mean, if you look at Vanderbilt and you look at Kentucky, I mean, they've upset some of the big boys in SEC play already. So it'll be really interesting to see head to head. I like Vandy in that one. I think Kentucky defense comes, but I think, Vandy's playing with a lot of momentum, but Kentucky is playing at home. So that's going to be another. And I guess that Texas Oklahoma one, this one, I think Texas is back. They're finally for real. I'm glad that we can finally say it. I don't know, Mark, how many Longhorns you've been around, but I think that they've been saying we're back, we're back, we're back for I don't know how many years, but I think that they can finally rest assured that Coach Sark and what he's done down there building that program. I think Texas is back. I think that they're for real. I think we'll see more. We'll see more of Texas as they get into the schedule, but I think Texas, this is played in Dallas, the neutral site, because it's equal distance. If people don't know, it's the equal distance between Norman and Austin. That's why they play at the neutral site in Texas. I just don't think I'm really surprised that Oklahoma has gotten its footing. I just think that Jackson Arnold, and I'll say it again, really touted quarterback coming out. He just hasn't been able to find his way in anchoring and taking hold. And I just don't think that Oklahoma's got enough firepower in that offense to be able to stop whoever's in that Texas defense. But more importantly, I just think that whoever's in the back, whether it's yours or whether it's Arch Manning, that I just don't think that Oklahoma defense has enough to stop the speed and what's coming on that Texas offense. I think Texas is just controlling the game early on, and I just think that they run back. I think they're going to just outrun and outwork and outcondition Oklahoma.
Oklahoma actually going with their second guy at quarterback this week, Michael Hawkins. They're sending Jackson Arnold to the bench as Hawkins gets another shot as they were able to beat Auburn. So, Leanne, how good are you not just predicting the lines in terms of who's going to win the game, but if you don't look, if I ask you what the lines are for these games, do you want to take a shot?
Oh man, I have not tried that before. I would probably say that Massachusetts Missouri line is probably ridiculous. It's probably like in the 20 or 30s favoring Mizzou. How are we looking at that? Maybe. Let's see if I got
27 and a
lucky.
half.
7. Okay, yeah. All right. That Oklahoma,
South Carolina,
Texas,
Bama up top.
South Carolina, Bama. Let's see. Bama, Alabama. Let's see, like a 12-point favorite.
21.
Or is it bigger than that? 21. Oh goodness, that's surprising.
21.
Even though, yeah, 21.
Texas.
OU, Texas. I'm gonna say Texas favored by 25 at least.
14 and a half.
14 and a half. I almost said 15. So yeah, I got to work on that for next week. I got to work on that for next week.
We got Georgia,
as far as predicting
State.
the lines. Georgia, Mississippi State. Let's go for 27 Georgia.
Got 34.
34.
Tennessee and Florida.
Florida. Let's see. Tennessee, let's give them 28 points.
15 and a half.
15. Oh, whoa. I gave Tennessee benefit of the doubt over Florida.
Ole Miss and LSU. Then we got Vandy at Kentucky.
Let's say 11 points. Kentucky favored it.
13 and a half. Good guess.
Not bad. Not bad. I'll definitely have to work on that.
I just thought I'd throw those at you. I was just curious.
Well, I don't know about. You look at the lines too as well, Mark. And don't you think it's kind of interesting some of the teams that get favored even after a loss, and you're just like, sometimes I look at the weeks and I'm just like, they get favorited, and it's just like, what team are you looking at here? It's just really interesting how the computer and the analytics all work on those lines. And like I said, and then again, Vegas has its own set on shifting those lines because how that changes everything. So it's always interesting to look, but I'm always surprised, some of the teams that get favorited. And it makes me want to go for the underdog more, obviously, but yeah.
Yeah. I think Vegas, they come to a conclusion on these teams. They form an opinion. When I say that, it's not like you said, the metrics, the analytics, I'm not talking about people just, throwing out opinions, but, and they're tough to move. They have an opinion, again, their metrics and analytics, and it is tough for that to change much. They don't just budge much just because, let's say, Alabama loses to Vandy. They're not going to completely change their take on Alabama just because of one result. It takes a lot for them to move on a team.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you there.
All right, folks, we're here talking Ole Miss with all of you and the SEC every Wednesday. So typically at 2 p.m. Eastern time, you can join Leanne and myself, and we'll be on the Ole Miss channel. So please join us there. And because we are going to shift this from the main channel and take it on over to the Ole Miss channel. So we're simulcasting this week and for a few weeks here. All right. Anything on the recruiting front that we need to talk about?
On the recruiting front, a big game, of course, none other than in the Lone Star State against Duncanville at DeSoto. The #1 team in Texas is in Duncanville, taking on the #4 team in Texas in DeSoto. DeSoto is a team that I've watched. I'll be out there. I'll be out there at DeSoto this week on Friday. It's gonna, like I said, I think there's over 200 media. I wouldn't be surprised if some coaches are in helicopters coming down. All that show and pageantry that those recruits love. And great, we had some graphics put up. Like I said, DeSoto's a team I've been watching. I always got to put Byron Washington on the list. He's one of those that I always say is the one that got away. He is a Syracuse commit, but man, that kid is one of the most hardest working linemen that I've ever seen. Really humble, but you can't help but miss him. He's all over TikTok and everything. He's about 6'7", 6'8". Just a beast on that line. It's like, here's everybody else's offensive line, and here's Byron Washington. So I always have to put him on the list because he's going to be a dynamic player. We'll see if maybe we can get him closer to home, but right now he's committed to Syracuse, of course. A wide receiver who's an SMU commit that is a Dalen Singleton. And that, when you talk about these kids and you see them, I mean, these are not just Texas kids that stand out in Texas. I mean, they're national, on the circuit. But Ethan Booby Feaster, another young wide receiver, 2027. Two kids that are on the rise that we've also been looking for at the Rebels are two running backs. I saw them a couple weeks ago when they played at a neutral site in San Antonio at the Alamo Dome. Serrard Baker, Myson Johnson Cook, their names, you got to know those names and get to learn those names, especially if you're an Ole Miss Rebel. Talk about some kids in that backfield. As much as we talk about kids like Feaster, Washington, Singleton, Baker and Johnson Cook are two kids that we're going to be hearing more about. They made some big plays, big touchdowns for DeSoto. I expect that it's going to be another, high-powered game. This is one of the biggest rivalries in the state of Texas. Like I said, it's going to be a huge game, and we're glad to be there. It's going to be our Rebel Walk game of the week. But these are some of the guys, of course, always looking for some new, fresh faces. But these are the guys that we'll be concentrating on, that the Rebels also have their eyes on. And like I said, hopefully some of these kids, we might be able to get them to look Ole Miss way despite being, committed to other places. So that's who we're looking at for the DeSoto. Yeah, DeSoto. And then, of course, you can't talk about DeSoto without talking about Duncanville. I don't know if we have that graphic up. A lot less players, but hey, it's not about quantity, it's about quality, right? And a kid that we've been looking, which I'm really surprised, just barely. Well, he just not barely just got his name, but really, Keelan Russell is a kid who's been super phenomenal. Took the reins at Duncanville, his freshman year, and then he was able to just kind of he went in there and freshman sophomore year led Duncanville to a state title, and he's going for a three-peat. Nobody really knew about him, but man, this kid has been phenomenal since I've been watching him from the last couple years. Of course, he's an Alabama commit. He was formerly an SMU commit. Ole Miss was really high on him, and even though he's committed to Alabama, the Rebels are still hoping that and are still going after him, and rightfully so. Like I said, Mark, you watch this kid on film, real leader on the field, but man, he's just electric in the air. So it's going to be another big game. Some other kids we're going to be looking at, some 26s and 27. Of course, Zach Turner, 3-star tight end out of Duncanville. KJ Ford, a 4-star edge. Really has great feet. Comes off quick step. I mean, he's just a big body. And then of course another new guy that we're adding on to the list that we weren't looking at last time, but we've turning some heads, turning some eyes. Of course, you can't think about Ole Miss without thinking about wide receiver U, and one we're looking at is Trenton Yancey. So these are some of the kids that we're going to be having, this week, and they're going to be eyes out. Like I said, always looking to more. But Duncanville, DeSoto, a lot of good players, a lot of national talent that's going to be on there.
Awesome. But Saturday nights, it's of course all eyes focused on Death Valley LSU, Ole Miss. Uh, Ole Miss obviously needs a win here. They've already lost a game in the SEC. LSU with an out-of-conference win or loss there against USC. 10-2, kind of that magic number to get you safely to the college football playoff. 9-3 might do it, but 10-2 definitely will, especially for SEC teams. So can't afford a loss, and Ole Miss goes to LSU. All right, everyone. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. And again, it's every Wednesday with Leanne and I talking Rebels with all of you. Bring your family, bring your friends, bring in 50 or so with you for our show next week. Leanne, always good to see you, and always good to get together to talk Rebels.
Always hotty toddy, but just going to leave you some last minute. We've talked about it, but I just really think keys to the game. Ole Miss keeping it simple, convert those third downs. It's a must win for them. They got to win those turnover battles, but they also got to convert on those third downs. And I think for LSU, we've talked about it. They got to get pressure on Dark. I think when a team can get pressure on Dark and put him in tough situations, but third and long. So it's going to be the story about the front lines, but also about those third downs and those third and longs are going to be, I think, the storylines in this game. But again, hopefully, it's a must win for either one of these teams. Somebody's going to go home sad. Somebody's going to go home, with another loss. But again, it's going to be a great team. It's going to be a great matchup. Tune in to Baton Rouge and Death Valley. And we can't wait to come back next week and hopefully talk about a Rebel win and talk about, heading into week 8.